The words of the prophets must be fulfilled. What do I mean when I say that? Well, yesterday I was quoting certain scriptures where one in particular was where Jerusalem had to be destroyed in 67 to 70 AD so that the words of the prophets would be fulfilled. And this is not the subject matter that I'm going into. What I'm starting off first is to prove that what is going on today, the fracturing of the nations, the confusion, the state of confusion that's going on is so that the words of the prophets are fulfilled. What I was quoting was Luke 21, verse 20 yesterday. Okay? There's something in there that's written. It's very, very, very important. Okay? Start in verse 20. And when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, that happened in 67 AD. Okay? That's not something for the future per se. What I mean is, there's not going to be a replay of verse 20 through 24. No, this is going to be different because the time of the Gentiles has come to an end. How do I know that the time of the Gentiles has come to an end? When Israel took back East Jerusalem in 1967, that means that the time of the Gentiles was about to come to an end. What happened in 1967 was a partial fulfillment of Joel 3 and verse 1. Joel 3 and verse 1 is a summary of the entire chapter of Joel 3. Because it says, in those days and in that time, when I shall restore Jerusalem to the Jews. Okay? That's what it says. It happened. 1967. So that was a prelude to the time of the Gentiles coming to an end. It says then, I will. Let's go there. I don't want to lose my thought, lose my place here, but I have to point this out. Joel 3. For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall restore Jerusalem to Judah. Verse 2, okay? I will also gather the Goyim and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will enter into judgment with them on behalf of my people, my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. So it has to happen within a certain time frame of what happened in 1967. Has to. It must happen in that time frame. Are we still in that time frame? Yes. It could be within a generation, but it doesn't have to be. But it has to be, what I'm saying is, it has to be within the same time frame. It can be 10 years later, it can be 20 years later, it can be 30 years later, it can be 40, 50 years later, etc. We are, 51 years later? 67? I think so. I think we're at 51 years later. Okay. We're still within those days and in that time. So there's actually, when you stop and consider this, in Joel 3, there's a deadline. There's a deadline for verse 2 to happen because the 67 war is proof that verse 1 has already taken place. Okay, let's go back to where I was. Okay? So I have proven over and over and over again that Luke 21 verses 20, 21, 24, 22, 23, 24 has already occurred from 67 AD to 70 AD in spite of what your lying preacher tells you. Okay. But here's what I'm getting at. In verse 22 it says, "For these are the days of vengeance, that all things which are written in the scripture," this is concerning vengeance against Jerusalem, Israel, "might be fulfilled." So when that episode, when that point in history takes place, all the things, not some, all the things that are written against Judah, Jerusalem, and Israel will be fulfilled. Finished. No more tribulation upon Jerusalem after that, period. Until when the time of the Gentiles comes to an end. Once again, so that all these things which are written in the scripture and the prophets might be fulfilled. It had to be done. Why? So that afterward, Jehovah, our Father in heaven, would once again be able to have mercy upon Zion, have mercy upon Jerusalem, and have mercy upon the entire population of Israel, both found and lost. There are some people out there who have no idea that they're of the house of Israel and will never know until the angels start coming and telling them, you have to go back to the Holy Land. Now, so what's happening today concerning the fracturing of the nations? It's been told by the prophets. More specifically, the prophet Daniel. So I am amazed, appalled, and alarmed at how, the entire world today, you have the Europeans, you have the Russians, you have the Iranians, you have, like I said, the almost entirety of Europe. And then even in the United States, everything is Donald Trump's fault. Now, I'm not sticking up for Donald Trump. I have a independent what do you call it? I guess that's the word for it. Independent view of this, coming from a different viewpoint. What is that viewpoint? Well, how do I put this? Since President Ronald Reagan, Donald Trump is an anomaly. We all know this, okay? And Reagan, for his first term, was an anomaly. And then, of course, when the assassination attempt happened, and of course, the assassination attempt was done by a family or a family member of one of the vice president's friends. So it's obvious that they were going to take him out, but they didn't take him out, and he was forced to toe the line of the establishment in Washington. Ronald Reagan was, you can go look up his record and you will see that his second term he changed to toe the line of the establishment in Washington, D.C. So many years later, the establishment in Washington, D.C. has been threatened. But not only the establishment in Washington, D.C. is threatened, but the establishment around the entire world has been threatened by this one man. Rather than pointing the blame at him, maybe you should reference the scripture and realize that this might have been done by a higher power. For what purpose? It is written in the scripture that this fracturing must occur. Don't blame Donald Trump. It's not his fault. And I know I lose a certain segment of people when I say that. But I will go to the scripture and I will point out to you that it is not Donald Trump's fault. Scripture has to be fulfilled. Daniel 2. What's going on around the world is not about Donald Trump. It's about Israel. That's what it's about. Please understand, folks. Stop pointing your finger at Donald Trump and realize this is about Israel and about Israel's enemies. Verse 40, and the fourth kingdom, that's the Iron Kingdom. The Bronze Age was the Grecian Empire. The Iron Age, the Iron Kingdom, was the Roman Empire, based in Europe. Okay. Shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaks in pieces and subdues all things, as iron that breaks all of these, it shall break in pieces and bruise. And whereas you saw the feet and the toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. But there shall be in it the strength of iron, for as much as you saw the iron mixed with miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron, so this is later in the kingdom or later in the empire, later on. It works its way from down to the, the legs, the feet, and the toes, as it goes into later on into the years. As the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so is the kingdom partly strong and partly broken, partly fractured. Is Europe fractured today? Yes, it is. But you might say that it was also fractured in World War I and World War II. That is true. But this fracturing that's occurring today is for one reason, and one reason only. And whereas you saw the iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. Yes, you see, they invited the mud people into Europe and mingled themselves with them. But they shall not cleave to one another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. So whose fault is that? Well, it's the fault of the Europeans themselves. However, this particular scripture, was essential for it to occur, and it did. Is that Donald Trump's fault that Europe is so terribly fractured today? No. Once again, there's a higher power involved here. Okay. I will bring Strong's Concordance out and look at verse 42, and look up the word broken, and I believe you will see. I don't know what it means yet. Broken means broken, obviously, but I think you may find the word fractured there. And if for some reason that word seems to have more resonance with people than broken, which makes no sense, but I will go and the word is T-bar, 8406 in Strong's Concordance, to break, brittle, to break. It's very simple. Broken, brittle, because it's brittle. All right. So now, folks, I want to read you an article. And I try not to read off articles online from zeroheads.com because of the manner of people or the manner of attitude, mentality of the writer, Tyler Durden, and his and the people on his blog. They're not honorable people, okay? But when the news is the news, I will go ahead and read it. Europe unveils special purpose vehicle to bypass SWIFT, jeopardizing dollar's reserve status. In a stunning vote of no confidence in the U.S. monopoly over global payment infrastructure, 1 month ago, Germany's Foreign Minister, Heiko Maas, called for the creation of a new payment system independent of the U.S. that would allow Brussels to be independent in its financial operations from Washington as a means of rescuing the nuclear deal between Iran and the West. All right, that's all I need to read from this particular article. We have immense fracturing in the West going on. And in this particular case, it is because Donald Trump's enemies, political enemies within the United States and within Europe, were using Iran as a vehicle of money laundering. That's right. That's what the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action was all about. Money laundering. And Donald Trump turned that vehicle upside down by ditching the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Now, once again, people will point the finger at Donald Trump and in anger accuse him of upsetting the world peace by doing this. And now they want to circumvent. Why? Why are they so hell-bent on the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action? Because the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action was a vehicle in which certain world leaders and their minions were able to pocket cash away from outside scrutiny. That's called money laundering, folks. And they will do whatever it takes to get that money that they were promised by the Iranians. And if it means they sell their own nations down the river, they are so greedy. That's where the real problem is here. But as I said, this fracturing had to occur. This breaking apart of the West was predicted. It has to occur so that the words of the prophets be fulfilled. So don't marvel, don't get all upset at Donald Trump because this is happening. Recognize the fact that it has to happen. During the time when Judah and Jerusalem was being destroyed by the armies that were surrounding Jerusalem in 67 AD to 70 AD, what was happening was the Jews in Jerusalem had turned against each other and were killing each other, not realizing that the words of the prophets had to be fulfilled as it is written in Luke 21. In verse 22, for these be the days of vengeance, that all the things that are written in the prophets may be fulfilled. Now comes the vengeance against the Gentiles. As I pointed out, Paul pointed out the Jew first and then the Gentile. The Jew first and then the Hellenes. The Hellenes are the Gentiles who have been Hellenized. Hellenization has gone from all the way from Russia and Asia Minor all the way to the furthest west points. And if you don't believe it, go and do some study to show how our society has been affected, has been adopted the Greek system. And in Russia especially, uses the Greek alphabet, the Cyrillic alphabet. So it's no wonder that it's written to the Jew first and then to the Greek. It is no wonder that it's written in Zechariah 9 that the war that's going to take place will be the Zionists versus the Hellenes, the Greeks. This all has to happen. Don't be alarmed. Don't be shooting at each other. But guess what's going to happen? That's exactly what's going to happen. Those of you who should have insight, okay? What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to teach people who are angry and bitter to back away from the emotion of this whole scenario we're seeing here and realize the bigger picture. Don't be like the Jews who were in Jerusalem in 67 AD to 70 AD, killing each other. This is why I've said in previous videos, this coming war inside the United States and inside Europe of people fighting against each other, that's not my war. I'm not participating. There's a bigger picture here. What's happening has to be fulfilled so that the words of the prophets are fulfilled. It's just that simple. And the words of the prophets, as I mentioned, Haggai 2 verses 18 through 22, alliance against alliance and brother against brother is going to happen. Ezekiel 38 says the same thing. Where is it? It's down. Verse 21. And I will call for a sword against him, that's Gog, throughout all my mountains, saith Jehovah Elohim, and every man's sword shall be against his brother. Is there a time in history when this sort of event did occur? Yes, it is. It was during the days of Jehoshaphat. Let's see, the Battle of Jehoshaphat. I'll have to Google it. Okay, I believe, yes, it's in 2nd Chronicles 20. So we'll go there. So we see in verse 1, it came to pass also that the children of Moab and the children of Ammon, or Ammon, came, and with them other besides the Ammonites. In other words, it was a coalition army. What do we see gathering around Israel in the north? A coalition army, okay? Verse 2, then there came some that told Jehoshaphat, saying, there comes a great multitude against you from beyond the sea, on this side Syria. And behold, they be in Hazazon Tamar, which is En Gedi. And Jehoshaphat feared and set himself to seek Jehovah and proclaim the fast throughout all of Judah. And Judah gathered themselves together to ask help from Jehovah. Even out of all the cities of Judah they came to seek Jehovah. All right. And you can read Jehoshaphat's prayer. And he says that, they do not have the military strength to fight against these people. And then a prophet came. Jehaziel, a Levite of the son of Asaph, came the Spirit of Jehovah in the midst of the congregation, and he said, listen, all Judah, and you inhabitants of Jerusalem, and you, King Jehoshaphat. Thus saith Jehovah unto you, be not afraid nor dismayed by reason of this great multitude, for the battle is not yours, but it's Jehovah's battle. Tomorrow go down against them. What? Go down against them? That's what it says. Behold, they come up by the cliff of Ziz, and you shall find them at the end of the brook, before the wilderness of Jeruel. You need not to fight in this battle. Just position yourselves and stand still. And see the salvation of Jehovah with you, O Judah and Jerusalem. Fear not, nor be dismayed. Tomorrow go out against them, for Jehovah will be with you. Then Jehoshaphat bowed his head with his face to the ground, and all Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem fell before Jehovah, worshiping Jehovah. And the Levites of the children of the Kohathites and the children of the Korites stood up to praise Jehovah Elohim of Israel with a loud voice on high. And they rose up early in the morning and went forth in the wilderness of Tekoa. And as they went forth, Jehoshaphat stood and said, hear me, O Judah and you inhabitants of Jerusalem, believe in Jehovah your Elohim, so shall you be established. Established? This is a prophecy of the future. In this way will Judah and Jerusalem be reestablished against a coalition of armies. Well, in 1967, guess what? This did happen. A coalition of armies came against the Jews and were defeated. However, it was not brother against brother. I will continue. Believe his prophets, and so you shall prosper. I would take the advice of Jehoshaphat. Believe the prophets. Believe what is written in Daniel 2, verses 40 through 45, and you will survive. You will not be taken in by this infighting. And when he had consulted with the peoples, he appointed singers unto Jehovah, and that should praise the beauty of holiness. And then when they went out before the army to say, Praise Jehovah, for his mercy endures forever. And when they began to sing and to praise Jehovah, he set ambushments against the children of Ammon, Moab, and Mount Seir. What were these ambushments? These were angels ambushing these three armies that were coming together against Judah and Jerusalem. The angels attacked them. These three armies, Ammon, Moab, and Mount Seir, did not see the angels. They thought, the Ammonites thought that Mount Seir and Moab had attacked them. The Moabites thought the Ammonites and Seir attacked them, and Seir thought that Ammon and Moab attacked them. That's what happened. Ambushments against the children of Ammon, Moab, and Mount Seir, which were come up against Judah, and they were smitten. For the children of Ammon and Moab stood up against the inhabitants of Mount Seir, utterly to slay and destroy them. They were angered by what happened. They thought that the others were ambushing them when it was angels. And when they had made an end of the inhabitants of Seir, everyone helped to destroy another. See, this is going to happen again in a much greater way. And this is the reason why, when we go to Joel 3, the insinuation is a replay of the battle of Jehoshaphat, is it not? You see. So let's go back to Joel 3, and what does it say? For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity, the exiles of Judah and Jerusalem. Have they been brought back? Yes. I will also gather the goyim, and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat. Why? To replay that scenario. You see. And will enter into judgment with them because of what they did to my people, my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. And who do they scatter them among? Verse 6, the children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem you have sold unto the who? Here we go again, the Greeks, the Hellenes. You see a common theme here. Sold to the Western nations. Now, as you can see in verse 4, Tyre, Zidon, and the Palestinians are going to be judged first. And if that is the case, we're going to have a war between Israel and Lebanon and the Gazans. And then right around the same time, a probable invasion by the Northern Army. Right around the same time. The Greeks, the Hellene peoples. Once again, the Hellenes are all of Turkey, Russia, to the farthest points west, because all of these nations have been Hellenized and borrowed much of their societal activity from the Greeks. It's much larger than you think. So, For those of you who want to participate in this coming, what do you call it, unrest, political unrest in the West, you would do well not to participate in it. You might even survive if you don't participate in it. But if you do participate in it, you will likely die. So get the emotion out of the equation here and realize there is a higher power at work. And it's for Israel's sake. It is so that the world, the Western world, the world must fall, Rome must fall, so that Jerusalem rises. It's just that simple. Hopefully a few lives might be saved as a result of this message, I hope.